Okay, I think everybody who's waiting is now in. Okay, so first let me introduce this session. We've been progressing through this pandemic. Now we're in the place where many states are starting to open in terms of letting people get back to filming. Even before that happened, some people were still starting to film as things opened up in more remote areas. So the question is, obviously things aren't back to normal, but they are headed that direction. But what's normal now is a little bit different. What's normal is inclusive of keeping sets clean, keeping people healthy, worrying about people who are coming into our environment that might already be sick. How do we deal with all those things? Again, this is our WheresSpot meeting. Most of the people here, I think there might be a couple people who are not familiar or not on WheresSpot, because our co-host, our guest host this time invited a couple other people from outside. I will ask everybody to go join WheresSpot if you aren't a member. And if you are a member, Perry and I have been working on some new ideas for WheresSpot to make it even a little bit better. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is by finding out who everybody is. Right now, mostly we're on Facebook. Yes, we're on LinkedIn and Twitter, but really most of the conversation's happening on Facebook. I've posted a link to, which is wherespot.com/member-info, where we are asking anybody who hasn't already to go. It's a lot of the same information that you gave us here for joining this Zoom meeting, but we'd like it's on a database that we're going to collect so we know who's using WheresSpot currently, because it's hard to tell from the Facebook page.
Basic social security number, bank account, basic stuff.
Anyway, so if you can go do that, if you haven't already, I think we put a post on WheresSpot about this. So I'm Michael Porte, and I'm going to have Perry introduce himself, and then our co-host, Paul Papanek, and I'm going to pronounce that probably wrong, but he'll give you
totally right.
Okay, he'll give you that, and he's been really kind in being one of the first people I know who actually went out and shot what I would call full crude commercial shoot, since the pandemic. And he learned a lot, and he did some intense work to try to get to that point and to try to keep everybody safe. And he's been very kind to say, I'll share that info with our community. I think it's really fantastic. Thank you, Paul. And he'll let him introduce himself after Perry does his quick introduction. Go ahead, Perry.
Perry Schaffer, longtime rep, founder of WheresSpot. That's it. I'm done.
Fantastic. Good job. Okay, we'll move on to Paul. Paul, who are you? Why are you sharing all this with us? And give us a little background about you before you move into what you've been doing.
Hey, thanks so much, Perry and Michael, for hosting. And I'm really excited to share what we learned. I've been a producer for 35 years. With a little detour along the way into production consulting, came back to producing, and I was tapped to produce a spot a few weeks ago and felt that we learned so much that I wanted to share, because when we were bidding and approaching this project, we didn't have anything to go on. Nobody came before us during pandemic. So I just felt it was important to share. And that's what we're going to do. But I know that there are going to be a lot of questions, but I want to head off 4 of them before we get started. First of all, I'm under an NDA, so I can't reveal the product, and I can't reveal the production company. But I will say that it was a non-union shoot all the way around. The production company is not a union SIG. And because this was a client direct project and not going through a standard agency, The talent was also non-union. Second, I'm not an insurance expert, nor do I play one on TV. So I won't be able to answer any of your insurance questions. I know that you'll have them. All I can say is that Ruben insured the shoot under the production company's standard production policy. I believe that there was language in the production contract with the client that spelled out who would be responsible for costs were there to be a virus-related delay or postponement. But I don't have visibility on that contract, so I can't say for sure. Next, I'm not an expert on, every state's rules and regulations about where it's possible to shoot. So all that being said, I am going to share my screen. Now, can everybody see the full screen of the?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because I never know, so I always have to ask. So, as I said, this was a client direct project, and I want to give you some background. This project first came to the production company back in February. And at that time, the creative was, it was a night shoot. And it had a helicopter with a searchlight as a character in the commercial. And as we analyzed the creative and started to bid it, and did bid it, it was a crew of over 60. It was 3 nights. We knew we were going to shoot in Moab. We scouted in Moab on the ground. We held our casting session out of Salt Lake, right up to callbacks. We didn't have callbacks. And about 4 days before we were supposed to leave for location, the lockdown happened. So we packed up and went home. A few weeks ago, well, now it's about a month ago, the client came back to us because this was a new product launch for them, and they had absolutely no assets for the product. So they asked if we could mount the shoot because things were starting to open up again. And we said no. The shoot was too big for us to be able to protect the health and safety and welfare of the crew. So we all hunkered down together, the client, production company, creative team, and the production company served as the agency on this as well. We decided that we could switch the creative today, lose the helicopter, change a few things, and still achieve what the client wanted to achieve. So we rebid the job from the ground up, and this is that story. So, okay, so what we're going to cover is the project, the challenges that we faced, how we met those challenges, what we learned, and some of the conclusions we came to. So, project was a car shoot, 3 shooting days, distant location, Moab. We had an edge arm car. We had a heavy lift drone. We had a mix of LA, Salt Lake, and local crew. And our cast consisted of a mom, a son, and a dog. And here's our base camp. So the challenges were bidding for COVID because, as I said, we didn't know anybody who'd already done this. So, we didn't have anything to go by. COVID itself, how are we going to protect everybody? Permitting, the size of the crew, how we were going to get the crew to Moab, casting, wardrobe, makeup, one of the things that's on everybody's mind, and where were we going to get the dog? So let's jump into solutions. Bidding for COVID. Here's a heads up, everybody. Bidding is very different. There are so many new things to take into consideration that affect everything about your approach to the job. So we estimated PPE usage per number of crew per day. We figured that everybody would want to change their masks, or they would lose their masks and would need a new one 4 to 5 times a day. So we came out with about 600 of the blue surgical masks and jillions of gloves, which approximately nobody used. We researched and included the cost for constant disinfecting. And by the way, for bidding for COVID, we created a line in Section K on the AICP, which is called COVID mitigation. We then reached out to every department, told them what our plan was, and asked them if they felt that was enough for them to feel safe. And if it wasn't, and if anybody had any other ideas, we researched those and included those costs in that line. We researched hotels that had the most comprehensive safety and health protocols. Then, when all those costs were together on that COVID line, we added 50% and we spent every penny of it. And why is my screen? Okay, there we go. Then we had, and this is really, really super important, we had very transparent conversations with the production company, the client, and their production consultant about the costs. And everybody supported us as we were going through the bidding process the entire time. So for COVID, we sent COVID protocol notices and health questionnaires to all the crew and cast and asked them to read it, sign it, and return it prior to getting to set. We added a protocol review to our safety meetings every day. We also videotaped our safety meetings every day. We supplied ample PPE, as I already mentioned. We had a set medic taking and logging temperatures, and I'll talk more about that later in the deck. The set medic and the crew actually enforced physical distancing and PPE usage. We had constant disinfecting of all surfaces and spaces by professionals. And there's a lot of discussion going back and forth about who are the people who should do this. And from the very beginning, I've steadfastly believed that this is not something that should be put on the shoulders of production assistants. They can't be made responsible. It's not fair to make them responsible. And there are chemicals involved, and they should be handled by professionals. So what we did was we did a Google search in Salt Lake City for germ decontamination companies. And we found a company, an owner-operated company, licensed, bonded, and certified in the usage of all their EPA approved disinfecting agents. And somehow I talked him into doing this for us. And it turned out to be great. He came with several different kinds of fog. One was a dry mist fog. One was a semi-dry fog. There were surface decontaminants. He prepped disinfecting kits for each department and gave those to them so they could do their surfaces themselves. Before he arrived on set, I put him in direct contact with the camera house, the camera assistants, grip and electric, and the edge arm guys, so they could all discuss what disinfecting agents he was going to use, and they could all come to an agreement together on what would best suit everybody's needs, and protect the equipment at the same time. This guy's day job is disinfecting hospitals, hospital equipment, houses, and office buildings. So he was a really important part of our health and safety protocol. The rental house in Salt Lake couldn't find but one of those portable hand washing stations. And at the last minute, we found a guy in Seattle who has a trailer, 16-foot trailer. The doors fold up on either side to reveal 6 sinks. And it comes with 300 gallons of water, hot and cold running. And we just knew that having this on site with us would be a real incentive to get people to wash their hands constantly. So that was, again, a very important thing that we found at the last minute that we had not researched the cost of prior to, which ties back to the having increased our costs in the bid by 50%. We also brought a 2-hole bathroom trailer. Catering, we had a catering truck. The meals were served out of the truck and boxed as boxed lunches with prepackaged silverware. All our craft service was prepackaged. And we purposely didn't bring any lunch tables because we didn't want to provide the crew places that they could unconsciously congregate around. You know, we were fortunate in that we had a big expansive base camp. We did bring chairs and we spaced those out around base camp. And since everybody self-drove to location, we felt that we were giving people ample spots to eat their lunch. And we required, remote camera operating video van. So our hope in bringing this piece of equipment was that we could reduce the number of people in the camera car from 4 to 2. And the 2 would have been the driver and the arm operator. The Edge system has a piece of remote equipment that allows the DP or director to operate the head from outside the vehicle and to control the camera from outside the vehicle. So the AC ostensibly wouldn't have to be in the vehicle either. And the video van that we booked can throw the most solid signal I've ever seen for a mile. So obviously the idea was that we would be following and the 2 guys wouldn't have to be in the vehicle. Unfortunately, the technology isn't really there yet for the terrain in which we were shooting. So we were able to use it for some shots, and for the bulk of our shoot, we had to have the 4 people in the Edge arm car. We used the Tundra truck, so the cab is pretty spacious, and everybody was masked up. And I think now Edge has put plexiglass barriers between all the seat spaces, but we were their first job since pandemic, and they didn't have that prep yet. And then we required all the crew to self-drive to set. Lastly, we provided links to the CDC and OSHA websites and all the crew communication so people could double check what the guidelines were. Permitting. So we already knew where we were going to shoot because we'd already scouted it. And luckily what we had scouted was, the bulk of it was private land. But even then, we had ongoing dialogue with the Film Commission, the state of Utah, the city of Moab, and and the film commissioner about their health and safety requirements. And I'll tell you why this is really, really super important. The state that is ostensibly open will have one set of guidelines. The municipality can have a more stringent set of guidelines, and the permitting authority can have yet another set of guidelines. And an example of that is the state issued a paper that divided their guidelines into business and non-business. And on the non-business side, one of the first paragraphs is no social gatherings of over 10 people. And the BLM latched onto that immediately. So I called the Film Commission, and we looked at the business side of these guidelines that unfortunately didn't include the film industry. The film commissioner felt that the closest we could come to that was being considered a construction business, a construction site, which didn't have a personnel limitation. So with their support and backing, BLM came around and issued us our permits. We had 2 days on private property, and since this was now a day shoot, we wanted to open it up to another location that was BLM land and a highway. And as soon as the job was awarded, we called in our permits to BLM and the highway authorities, knowing that we could move the day one way or another, and the times didn't have to be nailed down. Working in our favor were two things. Our location manager in Moab, the incredible Crystal Bowden, is on a first name basis with everybody at the BLM and everybody who issues the highway permits. Secondly, because all public lands were still closed, the BLM wasn't overburdened with other permitting, and they were actually able to turn our permit around in a matter of days rather than a week to 2 weeks that they usually require. So the size of the...
Did we lose you, Paul?
Paul's frozen.
Oh, Paul is no longer with us. Hold
Something we said?
on. He's doing so well. I hope everybody's enjoying it so far.
How's everybody doing? It's a nice Friday here in the East.
It's beautiful here in Philadelphia.
Excellent.
Always sunny in Philadelphia.
We've been shooting in Philadelphia with a 16-person crew and found that mostly the clients were the hardest problem, and that the problem is when you don't have yet a safety supervisor on board, because no one knows what that means. The producer ends up being the bad guy, and the clients aren't happy with the bad guy. And that's why I think getting this on board and finding out what the certifications are as soon as possible is going to help everybody out, regardless of the type and style of shoot.
Right. We have one client, tabletop company, Schramm. They are fortunately in the mid-Hudson region. As some of you may know, New York State's been divided into regions, and when you meet certain criteria, you can be open phase 1, phase 2. So they're totally in business. Fortunately, tabletop, you typically have smaller crews, et cetera, and they have a big space, and they've implemented a lot of this stuff with taking temperatures and social distancing and disinfecting, et cetera, and streaming. Nobody wants to visit sets these days, particularly.
Paul.
Yeah.
Go ahead, jump in, Gary.
This is, I think what Paul's done, and hopefully we'll get him back quickly here, is just terrific.
Don't worry.
It really
We've been through,
sets up a tremendous protocol for what I would say a pretty large shoot, a car shoot, a lot of moving parts. The question I guess I have, we all have, and Scott, you've shot with a 16-person crew, and somebody else in Dallas with a much smaller crew, is I don't know if we can come to an average cost for all this COVID expense. And in Paul's case, if he can go outside his NDA, and the question I would have for him will be, how much did all this extra COVID stuff cost? He was doing a client direct job, so that shouldn't have been an issue. But being one of the first out of the block to do this, the prep days just on Paul had to be immense. I mean, the amount of work that went into prepping this job, not bringing a 60-foot trailer from Seattle. We all hopefully shot in Utah and Idaho, and there's plenty in Salt Lake City, but
at one point he said it was $8,000. By the way, early on when Paul was talking about this on WheresSpot, he had bid an extra $8,000.
An extra $8.
Yeah, and I don't know if that's 50 represents the 50%,
or it was 16,000.
But he made a point of saying that the agency or production company / agency got that money all approved from the client. Otherwise, they wouldn't have moved forward.
Yeah. And I guess the other question, since it was client direct, and to Scott's, point about the clients, you would think they'd be willing to pay for this. And, every production company in every state and every city is going to have to make up their own mind where they're going to pass all this along at cost just to get that safety element, approved, or try and take markup on it.
Yeah, I mean, when they actually, on my shoot in Austin, they didn't do it. They did it the PA way. I mean, the first day was all outside. The second day was in somebody's house. So I was a little concerned that they were doing it that way, because we had the second bid to shoot the same thing in Atlanta, where they had a company lined up and bid to sanitize the location before and after. And so they didn't. I guess they felt because there was only 4 people going to be in the house. Sorry. I got to take this phone.
Anybody else have anything?
I got something.
Go ahead, jump in.
Hey, this is Jamie. I'm Jamie Visay. I'm in Omaha, Nebraska. I'm a location scout and manager, and occasionally producer and stuff. I worked on the Bank of America thing that posted a couple weeks ago. We shot 6-person crew. We were one crew of 3 crews across 4 states. So, however, that got piped back to base camp, but the director was in Europe. The rest of the producers and stuff were in California.
That's great.
And we were shooting. We had no talent, and we shot all empty spaces. And it was all about like the lights coming back on, kind of a bit. That was the bit. But from a location standpoint, just FYI, just a vote for location scouts and managers, us, that all the guidelines are recommending virtual scouting and all that jazz, but just letting you know that there's some still physical scouting going on, and it's ultimately the best way. Because here's the bit: so many of these places, especially the interior spaces, in which, by the way, we shot interior and exterior. So many of these places are changing. Just like, for instance, like an office setup. There's people they're breaking up cubicles and spreading out floor plans. I had a scout after this last shoot where I was looking at grocery stores. Of course, grocery stores, high volume traffic area the way it is, but so many businesses are doing this temporary signage and stuff on like stickers on the floor and all that. So no more art department or set or directors going in and say, hey, we need to move that sign and we need to move this and da-da-da. It's there to stay. And this client wanted to shoot, we'll shoot at night. What's happening is the grocery stores, for instance, are giving their employees a break overnight, like just so it's a no-fly zone. So all kinds of different rules on just one particular department will apply as well. So just a thought.
Yeah.
Me and my business partner, Kevin Streckwald, on here took a COVID safety training course, and then the after course, which is to train the trainers, just mostly to find out what the new procedures would be. And it's pretty amazing the amount of preparation that you have to do to make a place technically safe. Yet none of the white papers have anything that really is addressing, to Carrie's point, what it's going to cost in any particular situation. But we've also done e-scouting, which is more than just saying, here, send us photos. We're directing via the cell phone, having location owners who are interested, also because we're raising the rates that we're paying them to keep them interested. And so far, it's been pretty good and sort of a specialty type of thing. It's a new way to do it.
Yeah, the whole thing about a COVID coordinator, I mean, I haven't seen anybody, I haven't seen any reference to some certification. I don't have a sense that that's a thing yet. Scott, you mentioned, what did you take? Who offered it? And
it's a bunch of people who are ex-OSHA people, and it's called Action OSH. It's an 8-hour training course conducted now via Zoom, and you get a certificate of completion. And they really do break it down and go into it. But there is no OSHA certification for this as of yet, nor are the unions saying what are the things, the certifications.
Nobody's really
Okay, guys. Hello. I'm going to let Paul has joined us again. He's now via phone. There you are. There's Paul. Does everybody see Paul?
Okay. I'm sorry, everybody. I've never had an internet outage at my house ever, and it picked this time to do it. So
I blame Trump.
So I really apologize. We were talking about crew. So we had 28 working crew, 2 car prep guys, a precision driver, 2 police, and that was our crew every day. And then we had a cast of 2 who did not work every day. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. So the 28 working crew were comprised of a first AC, a second AC, a DIT, 1 grip, who also handled some very lighting for us. We had a drone team, and it consisted of, can you still hear me? So we had a drone team that consisted of a pilot,
what you found quite a few,
and a drone camera operator. And then we had everybody else. We had production assistants, production, caterers, the edge arm crew, the video van guy. But getting back to the camera crew, we had 3 packages. We had a camera that lived on the arm, we had a camera that lived on a heavy lift drone, and we had a camera that was for rigging and hand holding. And to service all of those cameras, we had 1 first AC, 1 second AC, and the DIT who also handled media management. So with all of those people, with all of that crew, we ended up complying with state and local guidelines. But we had 100% buy-in from the crew, again, through very frank, very transparent conversations about the fact that they would have less manpower and fewer amenities and services. And everybody just signed on. Equally important, we had 100% buy-in from our director/DP regarding the constraints that we would have to be operating under for production. And those 2 things can't be understated. So how did we get everybody to Moab? We decided right off the bat that nobody would fly. That was a line in the sand for us. It's about a 11, 12-hour drive, depending on what you're driving, from LA to Moab. So we dictated that the crew would self-drive and that they would break it up into 2 days. So we bid for the crew to have 2 travel days each direction. We also defined what the halfway point would be, and through research, what the safest hotel would be, and dictated that as well. Once we were in Moab, the challenge was, where were we going to stay? And I'm sure a lot of you have shot in Moab, and the hotel choices run from really ultra cheap, yeah, sure, we'll throw the crew in there, to where are we going to put the agency and client and director. There's a relatively new Hilton property there that's quite nice. And we zeroed in on Hilton because they now have a collaboration with Lysol on a cleaning protocol. For example, once you check in, no hotel personnel enter your room. You're not going to get daily or any sort of maid service, housekeeping service, the entire time you're there. So it ended up being the most expensive property in Moab, but to us, there wasn't a less expensive way around how we would keep the crew healthy. So we booked everybody into that Hilton property. Casting. So as I mentioned before, we had cast all the way up to callbacks back in February, early March. And then we decided that we didn't really want to travel 2 more people to Moab. And we didn't want a mom and son who were unrelated to each other being in the picture car together. This made sense to us to try to find a mom and a son who have been quarantined together. So we decided that we'd cast locally in Moab. And the casting brief was to find an actual mom and son. And because we needed a dog, we included the dog in the casting brief. Location manager handled it all via self-taping. And then we had an outdoor, very physically distanced callback. We saw 4 mom and son and dog groups. And we ended up casting this mom and her son. And unfortunately, their dog was a little too loony for us. So we ended up using the dog that belonged to our location manager, who absolutely nailed it on the first take. We had mom do her own makeup, and we had her do makeup tests beforehand for approvals. We didn't have a client on set. So we wanted to be, just ultra diligent about involving them in everything we were doing while we were on location. And so the makeup tests were very important to them. The way the kid's hair looked was very important to them. And we had mom cut the son's hair. By this point, you've probably gotten the idea that we did not have makeup and wardrobe with us as part of the crew. And then the wardrobe was locally sourced. Mom went out, did shopping. I actually went to a couple of the stores with her. All the stores were open in Moab. I'm not going to make a judgment as to whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing. Then we sent the wardrobe choices to the client, who approved the final wardrobe. And as I said, the dog, we used a local dog. And the reason we decided to use a local dog was it was a very simple action. The dog had to sit and stay and hopefully look forlorn. And he comes built in with a forlorn look. And the dog handling complied with all the Humane Society rules. We used MAP, Movie Animals Protected. They cost a fraction of what the Humane Society costs and issue basically the exact same certificate for the networks. Now, here's what we learned. Wearing a mask all day really sucks, and it's very taxing on everybody's morale. We kind of anticipated this, and in scheduling our shoot days, we made sure that there were times, be it 10 minutes, 15 minutes, that the crew could wander away and take their masks off and breathe something other than their own exhale. The medic proved to be a slight weak link in our shoot crew. His protocol was not nearly as stringent as the protocol that we had in mind. And we hired the medic through a set medic company in Salt Lake. And it showed us that next time we would interface with somebody like an infectious disease physician and map out our own protocol and dictate that to the medic. I think this is all still so new to everybody that everybody's just trying to feel their way through it. Again, everybody's appearing on our set having not worked since the lockdown. And we're all learning by doing. That having all the snacks be prepackaged, like everybody's been talking about, was going to be enough. If we laid those out on a table, we were doing our job. And it occurred to us within the first hour of the first day that wasn't the case. That people would come up and grab a bag of Cheetos, and then they'd start feeling guilty about the Cheetos. And then they'd put it down and decide they wanted a fruit roll-up. And then they'd pick up a couple of different flavors of fruit roll-ups, putting each down one after another until they finally decided that what they really wanted was a bag of Doritos. So all of a sudden, every snack bag, everything that we had there was being touched by potentially 30 people several times over. So we gave all the craft service to the caterer to put inside the truck, and people could come and tell the caterer the snack that they wanted, and it would be handed to them by the caterer. Same with the PPE. We designated one person to hand out the masks. This is a big one. It's impossible, whether it's a local location or a distant location, it's impossible to control the movements of the crew after wrap. Short of stationing a security guard or a hall monitor in front of every crew member's door or in the lobby of the hotel or in front of everybody's house, you have to rely on the crew members taking that responsibility. And one of the ways that we found to help that was involving the crew and making them a proactive part of all the safety protocols. And when we did that, morale increased and their personal responsibility increased as well. It gave them a hyper awareness for their own safety and the safety of their fellow crew members. What I've described up to this point is what worked for us and worked for us for this shoot. Every production is going to have its own challenges, and the well thought out protocol that you came up with for your last shoot isn't going to necessarily apply to the next one, because creative is going to be different. And because the creative is going to be different, your production needs are going to be different. Where are you going to be shooting? How are you going to be shooting? How many days are you going to be shooting? Paul, so it's important to keep in mind as you're bidding. Production scheduling also needs to be really clear, and it needs to allow ample time for the crew to move efficiently and thoughtfully throughout the shoot day. So when we shot into the Memorial Day weekend, we had almost 15 hours of daylight that was available to us. Going into this through the bidding process, we already knew that we didn't want to ask the crew to work longer than a 12-hour day, which obviously meant that we'd be leaving a sunrise or a sunset on the ground every shoot day. It also meant that we were going to add a day to the shooting schedule. Pre-COVID, this easily would have been a 2-day shoot. Because of COVID and the pacing that we wanted to produce, we went to a 3 shooting day schedule. And there's a real emotional component to consider as everybody comes back to work. People haven't seen each other on a set since early March. And the first thing they want to do is socialize close to one another. There's a lot of sensitivity with which this needs to be treated when we're trying to reinforce PPE usage and physical distancing. So just something to be aware of. And then finally, some of the conclusions that we arrived at after we got back and considered what we had done. Clients and agencies really need to approve concepts that can be produced within the current limitations that we find ourselves in. You know, an ad agency will always want to present the big idea to the client, and an uneducated client will sign on. And then the agency will look to the production company to solve the problem. And as producers, that's what we've always done. We've always solved the problem. Today, we're not necessarily able to do that to the degree to which we've always been able to. And, you know, that's going to require a lot of client and agency education. And the client and agency should be active participants in finding solutions to these problems. Another thing we learned, just because the state is open doesn't mean you can shoot wherever you want. And I'll get to the chats in a second. I'm almost done. So, you know, what I described about Utah state, municipality, permitting authority, they're all things that need to be taken into consideration. And you just need to do a lot of research. Prepare for increased shooting schedules and COVID-related costs. Very important. And actually, SAG is requiring this now, I believe. Submit a detailed safety protocol during the bid process. People are going to want to know what you're going to do to keep everybody safe. And this is for the agency and client and SAG. And it's also for the crew. And document everything. Videotape your safety meetings. Have crew temperatures logged and signed by the crew. I can't say what this is going to be used for, but it just seems to us it's a good thing to have a record. There aren't any shortcuts to keeping a crew safe and healthy. And what I mean by that is if you find yourself with a $10,000 COVID mitigation line, don't go fishing in the rest of the bid for a place to make that up from, because you're still going to need that money to produce the job. The two issues, producing the job and the COVID mitigation, are absolutely exclusive to one another. One can't happen without the other. And then a lot of this is common sense, you know, be smart, and we're all responsible.
I'm going to ask two questions
Okay.
that have been.
Oh, you want to hang on? I know how to. No, I don't know how to hear you. Okay,
two questions.
Go ahead.
Two questions that people have been asking. One is budget. Did your line budget? You know, do you have any specifics about what those things cost?
Absolutely. So, and that's a great question. So, when we estimated the number of masks, that's an easy number to come up with. I'm actually about to come back on the real one. My internet seems to be up again. Anyway, that's a really easy one to come up with. You know, how much are masks? How many do you need? So that's easy.
Okay.
Oh, I'm back. Okay, hang on.
Modern technology.
Okay. Hi.
Okay.
So, then we got a price from our COVID mitigation guy, who gave us a price. And when I look back at it, it was a friggin' bargain. He charged us $5,500 to come from Salt Lake to Moab. He came on the day before the shoot. He disinfected everything on that day, then did his 3 days of disinfecting. And on the travel back day, he put all the trucks and equipment through another disinfecting protocol. When we were parting company, he turned to me and he said, you know, now that I see what this is all about, the price would have been, you know, $3,000 to $3,500 a day. Now, this was a distant location, so he had other costs involved. But, you know, we included that price. I think I rounded it up to $6,000 in the budget. We did not include the cost, because I didn't know we were going to have it, of that hand sink washing trailer. And I can actually show you a picture of that.
While you're about to show us that, the other question that people are asking is, this is 3-day shoots. One thing, you can travel, you can do all that stuff because you had, two, and you said that you included the cost of crew 2-day travel days. I mean, that added quite a chunk to your budget.
It definitely did.
Yeah. But what about a 1-day shoot? If you had a 1-day shoot and I'm not going to ask about shooting indoors because who knows what that's going to be, but you haven't done that one yet. But let's say you had a 1-day outdoor shoot, it's hard to turn that into a 2-day shoot sometimes.
It is. And every shoot is going to have its own challenges. And, hopefully, you have a client who's and a cost consultant who are going to be as understanding as the ones we were dealing with.
So they did understand that this was going to cost more and that they were
absolutely
ready to go.
Absolutely. They were in it with us from the get-go.
Right.
And
I'm going to take people, because we only have a couple more minutes. I'm going to unmute everybody and see if anybody else has a question that got everyone. If you're still on and you had a question that I didn't see, go ahead and let's see.
I've got a big one, and that is obviously your AD would have accounted for some of the time sucks. Were any things like that you hadn't accounted for that you're like, oh, changing a lens is taking 15 minutes now, or anything like that?
No. We luckily we were never shooting more than one camera at a time. So the camera department was able to pace themselves between lens changes and moving from the arm to the drone to handheld and rigging. We honestly were never held up at any time by anything unanticipated. The days were really, really well scheduled. I credit that to Eddie Nicholas, our AD, who did an incredible job, and our director, who was just completely the best partner possible.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
So, how are you?
Hey, Drew.
How are you? Good.
Good.
Hey, so this is more of a sort of ethereal question on this, but in your opinion, is this peace of mind, the COVID protocols and disinfectant? I mean, I'm of the belief that if you wear an N95 mask and I wear an N95 mask and we don't touch our face, we're going to be okay. We're going to reduce it by 90-something%. Mm-hmm. Am I wrong? Is this peace of mind for everybody on the crew and client and agency? Actors, I think, are a little bit of a different deal because they're going to be together for longer than the sort of 15-minute standing in one shadow. But could you have done this without all of the hoopla, what you know now?
Drew, I guess the short answer to that is maybe, but it didn't occur to us to not do it. And having been out there on a 3-day shoot with 30 people, and seeing what us having gone to this extent did for their peace of mind, I would think moving forward, I would attempt to do something similar.
Really?
Yeah. Yes, you're 100% right about the masks. We've all been reading the same stuff. But yeah, and we all know now, I guess, that surfaces, well, we don't know, surfaces may or may not be conveyors of the virus. But we just felt that we were doing the best thing possible to make everybody feel that they were being taken. What?
Someone's singing.
I'm going to just throw in a piece here. That was a good question and a good answer. Here's the issue. The issue is if one person gets sick because you didn't do everything you could, That sucks.
Michael, I agree, and my wife is compromised with her immune, so
I know we've had this
live with a whole different sort of protocol here. But the disease itself, what we don't know is of the 2 million people that have tested positive, what's the recovery? Because there's a lot of people that, we don't know what the recovery is. Is it 6 months? Is it a year? Is it lifetime? That's a bigger thing to me than the 100,000 people that have passed away that are over 65, and we don't know what that other 20% is. Are they obese? Do they have all the other comorbidities?
How much longer left from the episode, guys?
We don't know that. So I'm just trying to.
Here's what I'm going to say, because I don't want to go on too long, because here's the answer to that question. You and I have actually talked about this. We don't know. Nobody knows. My family are all doctors, and they have no idea. People who are working directly with this virus have really no clue how it's going to work itself out. So the point is, we have to assume, I think, at least that I feel, we have to assume that people are going to get sick. The question is, how do we make sure that less people get sick, the smallest amount of people get sick as possible under our watch? If they get sick elsewhere, that's one thing. But under our watch, I think that is no commercial that we do or no film that we do is worth losing one person over.
Right. But we don't know what they do after wrap.
No. Well, we don't. And again, you have to impress upon everybody how important it is to be a proactive part of everybody's health, not just their own. So, and I will point out a couple of things. This past Saturday, we passed our 14-day mark. We've reached out to the crew. Everybody's fine. So we're very happy about that. And then somebody had asked, did we give everybody a COVID test prior to the shoot? The answer is no. And that was for a couple of reasons. Number one, we had a very short prep time. From award to first shoot day was like a week and a half. Secondly, unless you're going to quarantine the crew member from the moment they get tested to the moment they step on the set, it's valueless. And third, there's been a lot of talk about the instant tests. Well, they're not available at scale yet, and they're not that accurate from what I've read. So we did not. But we did monitor everybody's temps throughout the day.
Hey, Paul.
Yeah.
Can I ask you two questions? One is, what did you do about Video Village? And the second one is, did you get, sensing all the regional differences politically, did you get any pushback from the local crew?
Okay. All good questions. We didn't have Video Village because we had no agency and client. So that was an easy one. What made the client uncomfortable was obviously not being there. We had 0 cell service where we were shooting for all 3 days. So a remote Video Village wasn't a possibility. We sent clips from the DIT when we got back to the hotel every night, and that seemed to placate the client. I will say regarding Video Village, it's my personal feeling that I don't see a world in which a client is going to sit at their desk for 10 or 12 hours and watch a video feed with no context. But that's my, if a client wanted it, of course we would do it. But we weren't able to at this point. Coming into Moab was interesting, Brian, because prior to us getting there, they'd only had 4 cases of the virus, and all 4 people had recovered. So there were some people who looked at us with caution when we arrived, but we had the full support of the city government and the Moab Film Commission, who were very nice and actually brought out a bunch of the neck buff things for us to use. I will say that since we were there, having nothing to do with us, Utah's cases have spiked, and And this is true actually for all the states who have opened to a greater extent than other states. I was watching the news last night, and Florida, Georgia, Arizona, Utah, the graph is friggin' like this now. So all the states that say they're open, I would now treat with maybe more caution than I did when we went to Utah.
I've heard through WheresSpot that there have been 2 or 3 shoots that was first postponed, then got scheduled for right about now, and then have now been postponed again. I don't know if anybody is here on this thing. If they do, can anybody talk to that?
Yeah, we had 2 projects here in Florida. So Florida pretty much opened for film. Most places, South Florida opened maybe 3 weeks ago. And one of our production partners I know had the client come back and pretty much say, these are the counties in Florida we'll let you shoot in now. These are the areas we don't want to send our client, our agency, our crew. So they're kind of forcing us to move locations within the state where there's lower cases.
Got it.
I'm not sure where they're making that determination or what their threshold is, but we've seen it now from 2 clients.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, one of the things that that we made sure of when the client first came back to us and asked if we could produce the spot, we got on the phone with our location manager, who told us that that Utah was due to start their partial opening that Friday. Had they not, we wouldn't have been able to go there, and we would have had to have said no. But they opened, which made us feel somewhat better because their cases had kind of leveled out. Now I have to say I might, have to give it much more careful consideration because of the current situation.
Is anybody on here currently planning a shoot in the next 2-3 weeks? Okay, that's the Florida. Okay, great. Anybody else? It's hard for me to see.
We've heard some rumblings, but that's about it.
I've got a couple shoots going on. Paul,
yeah.
I've shot 2 in Texas. Both went really well. Both small crews, sort of reminiscent of film school. Video Village was seamless. I think one of the most important things about Video Village in this kind of remote filming environment is to have not a 360 camera, but at least a set camera set up so it orients everybody into sort of what's going on. It puts you in a very familiar place. You can see who's where, what's happening, when people are kind of getting to it. And just having that feed really helped calm people down, calm the constant chatter of what's going on, when are we going to be up for the next shot, can I go away? It actually worked really well for both of the shoots in Texas. The other spot I have coming up is I'll be able to talk about later. It is a more traditional shoot that is being bid based on sort of the hypothetical guidelines that have been put out there. It's new for me. It's new for everybody bidding. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But that's sort of a traditional shoot that would be happening in Southern California.
Okay, so 3 things. First of all, I'm incredibly impressed that you've kept your hair so well cut through the pandemic.
I know that you enjoy the wild man look, Paul.
I've just gone into it 100%. Secondly, that 360 cam is a fantastic idea.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
And I immediately, as soon as you mentioned it, absolutely. And then third, hypothetical, it's all theory until people get to the set. We can prepare everything to the best of what we to the best of our ability regarding what we feel is the right thing. Just like, we had to make an adjustment on the medic and we had to make an adjustment on craft service, and those things, maybe they should have occurred to us prior to, but we corrected them as quickly as we could. But we all know that things happen on a set that might not be anticipated, and you have to be ready to pivot. And because it's all theory. We didn't have anybody to talk to ask how their shoot went before we went out and what we could expect. So, to Drew's question earlier about would I do the same thing again? Yeah, I mean, absolutely I would. To go above and beyond what anybody's telling me to do, to me is a total no-brainer.
Yeah.
It's a lot of common sense, Paul, no doubt.
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest, at least for me as a producer for a lot of years, I would miss is running up to the director at camera to whisper in his ear to move on. I'm not sure if I can do that. Yell across the room. I don't know if there are enough channels on the walkie-talkie, to put everybody on separate channels.
Indeed.
So we got. I'll let it go for another 5 minutes. Due to technical difficulties, we'll extend this one. But is there anyone else out there who have questions? People have asked about people pushing back on getting tests, but I agree. I think with what you said earlier, it's almost impossible to do tests. They take time to get back. Any test that I've seen anybody get, unless they were in a hospital, took over 2 days, and I wouldn't even discount the antibody test, because that supposedly got about a 50% accuracy. So what's the point of that? So I think the testing is not going to be something we can use right away. If they have rapid testing, great, that'd be fantastic. But anybody else? Questions?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
I have a question for Paul. You had mentioned you sent the crew and the talent prior to the shoot the company's safety and health protocol document, but as well as a health questionnaire. And I'm wondering where you got that questionnaire and what you did with it.
So the health questionnaire was supplied by the set medic company, and the COVID guidelines were produced by the legal department at the production company. And I can certainly share a genericized version of those, and I'll post those up on WheresSpot in the next day or so.
Great.
That's great. I mean, we have ours. I was just curious what you did with their health questionnaire. Was it just something to have in a file someday?
I think that's what Paul said. Paul,
yeah,
you just put it in a file, right? Kept it in case something happens later. You need to find it.
Yeah, exactly. There's obviously a lot of chatter about indemnification waivers, things like that. And I'm not going to get into that. I'm not a lawyer, but I think just having a record of what you're doing as a producer, it can't be a bad thing. It just can't. So keep the records and just put them on a shelf somewhere.
Anybody else?
This is John for Paul. You said you were pretty happy with the company you hired to disinfect your set. Do you mind sharing the company name?
Yeah, they're based in Salt Lake City. Their name is Germ Champs, and I'm more than happy to also a little later post their contact info. It's a very classic case of getting bitten by the movie business worm, bug. This guy walked away never wanting to disinfect another office building or hospital or piece of hospital gear again. So he will very much appreciate any work calls that come his way. And,
much appreciated. Thanks.
And I'm happy to help with that.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Just one quick question. You said, and I had to take a phone call. Your shoot was originally budgeted for 2 days?
No. So the first round of this job, when it was going to be a night shoot, was going to be 3 nights, and it was going to be close to $800,000. When this came back around and we rebid the job, and the concept became simpler, we had to wonder whether this could be done in 2 days. But as we went through everything that we would have to do and the way we wanted to ensure the crew's health and safety, it became obvious that we really needed a 3rd day. So
when you think about it, on a 1 day, a vast majority of shoots across all states commercials are basically a day.
Yeah.
There have been a lot of, I'm seeing questions here, the guidelines in this state and that state and California. I think it's going to make a difference here for a union company or a non-union, a union signator or a non-union signator, to most everybody in this chat. A typical 1 day shoot could be 14 hours because you just can't afford to go to a second day. Did the COVID prep, I think you have to put more prep time into COVID to keep to a decent day and keep moving along. We're not going to have as much time in a 1 day shoot to really sit there and do 4 extra takes.
Well,
because we're really going to need to move on if we're disinfecting in between.
Yeah, you're right, Kerry. And it's a challenge. Our, for instance, is so we had a picture car, right? Or the hero car we were shooting. The car prep guy would move it from point A to point B, wherever we needed it. Okay, he got out. We disinfected the car. The precision driver got in. We did our shots. He got out. We disinfected the car. The cast got in. Then they got out. Then we had to rig the inside of the car. So there's a disinfection that happens between all those things. One of the reasons that we loved our disinfection guy so much was he had all his stuff was hydrogen peroxide based. So it was maybe 10 minutes in and out of the car before, 10 minutes, and then we had the car back. But I am still trying to picture in my head a shoot in a house in which, the art department comes in and does their number, and then they leave. And then the DP comes in with the gaffer and the electric crew, and they set the lights, and then they leave. And then the grips come in and they shape the light, and then they leave. And the DP comes back and goes, and then maybe by lunch, you're ready for your first shot. That might be a bit hyperbolic on my part. But these are all the things that we have to consider. If it looks like a 1 day shoot, you have to start thinking about that and how much time it's going to take, because, do you need to disinfect between every one of those departments who's coming in and out of the house? And all of a sudden, your health and safety protocol has taken a third of your day or a quarter of your day, which is significant if you've got a 1 day shoot.
Well, this is where sacrifice comes in, right?
Well, it's where sacrifice, I think it's more compromise, and it's more, it's a lot of and I keep using this word over and over again, transparent discussions happen from the moment the boards come in, and your analysis of the boards and what it's going to take to produce it begin. Can this be done in 1 day knowing what we need to do to keep everybody safe and to keep the shoot moving. And those are discussions that have to happen, with the agency. The agency has to involve the client. You can't hide from these things. You can't, really think about them from the point of view that, this will work itself out as we keep going. We'll figure it out. It has to be figured out before you start bidding.
Well, that is the biggest hurdle, what you were talking about, because on our end, we have tried to impart to our clients since mid-March, and we keep using this term, which is COVID doesn't care. You want to do something, it doesn't care. It's going to happen the way it's going to happen. And what we found is that while you may have a conversation with the ad team at the client, getting up the ladder at the client to the people who are really demanding what they want is a lot slower going.
Yeah, I would imagine.
So, well, as you brought up in one of the chats, I mean, some of the creative that's going to come down that you're bidding on has been focus grouped to death, and you simply are just going to have to bid it, away, because there may be resistance to change the creative to simplify the shoot.
Right.
Okay. And that's where the biggest problem is going to come. I think you can do all the common sense safety COVID stuff. And Ron, you would know this, what's the best way for clients to, if you come up with a $10,000 budget on a $100,000 day, 10% of your budget's going to go just to COVID mitigation.
Is
the client going to take that? What's the best way to handle it?
I'm going to cut this off because I think we've all gotten a lot of information. And now what we need to do is maybe have another one of these in maybe 2 or 3 weeks when we've all worked a little bit. Because I think what's reality is real different than what we all imagine it to be. And things are going to change. So I think we'll try this again. Stay tuned. We'll try to put this back together again after we've got some real experience out there and see what's happening. And see, the first time we hear somebody who's been on a set who gets sick and decides that they may want to sue somebody, or who knows what's going to happen. But what's the future going to look like? We'll only know when we get there. So I'm going to say this. I'm going to say thank you all for participating. It was amazing. Paul, I think that the information you shared was incredible. And thank you for
Good job,
being as open as you are about it. And because sometimes, we all keep that stuff right here. And I appreciate that. And I think the people on this call do as well.
It doesn't serve anybody to keep it to myself.
Well, thank you. We all appreciate that. And the rest
and thanks in advance, Paul, for any commissions that you get, any jobs you get, and the commission, the wine you'll be sending us.
And everybody else who shared their experiences, I appreciate that too. We'll see you all in the next one.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
And if anybody has questions, reach me on WheresSpot. Many of you have my contact info already. Don't hesitate.
I think you'll start getting a lot of calls. Okay.
Okay.
Take care all.
Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.